It's game time.
What's up, Internet? Been a while, huh? Well, for you, I mean, it's been a year since I published one of these. In actuality, I've done about 30 since then, but I haven't been happy with any of them, so they all got kind of trashed. Not the point. Today I want to talk about developers controlling the cool in their video games. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, essentially, as we rely more and more on things like cutscenes and higher graphical fidelity and things that really don't matter all that much in games, it feels like games are becoming less and less cool. There's less awesome, memorable moments. At least, that's what I feel. Now, the best example I have for this is Battlefield 3. And this topic is actually like the perfect analogy for Battlefield 3, but not the point. Anyway, there was a mission in this game where you flew a jet. Or rather, you were sitting behind the guy flying the jet, and you basically just had to watch a cutscene and try and kill a few enemies by pressing a button while you watched all the action actually happen. Now, initially, this might seem like a really cool moment, because you're in a jet, you're doing high-flying acrobatic stunts, and you're just doing some high-speed action, shooting down planes. That's cool. That is cool. Except, when you really look back at it, it's really just sort of an extended cutscene. In fact, as I recall, the entire mission takes about 20 minutes. So that's basically a 20-minute long QuickTime event you have to play through. As opposed to, say, having like a fully playable jet mission where you actually had to learn how to fly a jet, which that game seriously needed to do, and actually experience an awesome mission, maybe doing some actual high-flying acrobatic stunts yourself. Like, that would have been awesome. But instead we have a large, really kind of boring cutscene. And at the end of the day, it felt like the developers were basically saying, hey, look at this! We made this awesome engine, look how nice our game looks. I bet you prospective developers would like to have a game as nice as this. So if you licensed our engine, then maybe you could have a game that looks half as good as this. And it just felt like a large extended advertisement about just trying to make the game look cool. Like, you have to enjoy this set piece for X number of minutes before you can move on. And at the end of the day, is that cool? I don't think so. As an alternative, I would propose something like Just Cause 2, and I would assume Just Cause 3 if it's going to be anything like Just Cause 2, where you had this large environment, and the developers were basically saying, yeah, we got this campaign, and yeah, it's got some bombastic missions, but you have to faff about in this environment before you get to unlock those missions. And while that annoyed me, from a progression standpoint, in between those missions, to unlock that really, admittedly kind of crappy campaign, you had to do so many crazy different adventures. Like, you had to blow stuff up, you had to evade authorities, you had to deface giant statues. And oftentimes, you would run into these random events that just by happenstance occurred, like, it wouldn't be all that odd to surf a car off a mountain while being pursued by the police, only to end up skydiving and hookshotting onto a plane. And that's awesome! And that's something that just organically happens. And it feels way cooler because at the end of the day, that's something that happened uniquely to me, or you, or whatever. There's so many different ways that games could just create awesome events. But I feel that the greatest problem is developers are just leading players by the nose, just in fear that if they don't see something that developers have put in there expressly to show players to see how cool their game is, players might not remember their game as much, they might not talk about it as much, and they might not think it's as cool, which in turn leads to less revenue because they're not talking about it and less people want to buy it. And that's a completely legitimate concern. But the problem is that just forcing set pieces onto people, while they might initially seem cool, pretty much once you're done, they're completely forgettable, mainly because there's nothing actually there to talk about afterwards. I mean, yes, everyone who played Modern Warfare 2 saw a giant nuke flying through the sky from space, but what did that accomplish? I'm asking in all seriousness, like, that cutscene had no purpose other than, like, advertising material. But the point is that really cool? Or is whatever random adventure that just might happen on your adventure in Skyrim that you're going to tell your friends about better? Honestly, I like the organic adventures that create real stories that, while unique to me, and yes, while there's no guarantee it'll happen to anyone else, I think they'd be more likely to generate sales simply because I think there'd be greater amounts of water cooler talk just to talk about all the different crazy adventures you went on that happened expressly to you. And it wasn't through a cutscene, it wasn't through a QuickTime event, it was something that happened organically that you had to affect, or at least have some relative effect to causing. And yes, while sandbox games are more prone to this happening just because of their freeform nature, it's not to say that linear games are without stuff like this. I mean, imagine that last really hard 2D platformer you played where you managed to beat the game just by the skin of your teeth in a clutch play. That's an awesome story to tell people. That's a cool moment that wasn't manufactured. It was something you had to cause, and you were the central part of. And that, at the end of the day, is what's really cool. Not a set piece you're forced through, but rather something that you're actually part of, something that revolves around you, and something that you can affect change in. And it's these random adventures that developers can't really promise you, that are really what are going to generate talk. Now, I'm not saying there isn't place in this world for both, but I do feel that the cool events that you're not being dragged by the developers by your nose to see, and forced in front of your face for X number of seconds to appreciate before moving on, I feel that those are just nowhere near as good. Just because everyone's gonna see it, and when you get down to it, is it not an adventure that happens to you by random happenstance going to generate more talk than something everyone's gonna see and already know about?